My name is Thomas Reagan. I'm a professional property investor here in Australia. Now, I'm sure that you have heard people say, if you're in Australia especially, high-rise apartments never go up in value. You always lose money and etc., etc., etc. This goes on and on and on. They always say there's oversupply, blah, 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 blah. Look, most of the time that's true, but you know, sometimes it's not, and you can't just, when you hear comments, people saying general comments over and over and over again, generally start to believe it. But I'm trying to make you guys understand that just because people say it doesn't mean they know anything about it, right? Like I always try, I have friends, obviously, and sometimes they tell me about someone that I don't know. And they say, this person's horrible, I hate them so much, they're an army sergeant, they're very mean, you won't like them, no one likes them, etc., etc., etc. And I just try and remember, look, yeah, that's your opinion. I know I don't. That's not what I'm saying to my friends, but I try and remind myself, like tell myself, look, when I meet this person, I have to make my own decision of this person. Like I have to form my own opinion of this person. I can't just believe what someone says because that's their opinion. It may be true, it may be not. It doesn't really matter, right? But you obviously have to listen and somewhat take their advice, but you have to also make your own opinion. Now, that's how you have to look at property investing. You may go to a barbecue, you may hang out with some friends sometimes, and they may tell you never invest in property and this and that and the other. And the reality most of the time is these people with their opinions, they don't have any direct experience with doing what it is they're telling you to or not to do, right? So I'm starting to invest in CBD high-rise apartments, and it is definitely scary, right? Because of everything that everyone said, right, about it. But the investment lens that I choose to invest through is through investment principles, right? What does that mean? Like I buy property below replacement cost. I buy property. It doesn't necessarily have to be scarce. It just has to be in strict supply, right? The demand has to outstrip the supply, and people might just generally think because it's a high-rise apartment that there is oversupply, but it's just not true. Like if you go to China and you go in a city there and you walk around and you see the buildings are so high you can't even see the sun, do you think that there's oversupply there? Or is there just a lot of people and is there a lot of demand? And if another building was to get built next to it, do you think that building would get filled? Yes, it would, because there's so many people there. There's so much demand that the supply can't meet the demand. Therefore, when supply can't meet the demand, that pushes up the prices. That's a foundational principle, right? Like saying high-rise apartments don't go up in value. That's a subjective view, right? That's a barbecue talk from someone that doesn't know what they're talking about. Now, I invest in cash flow properties. I invest in properties below replacement cost that have upside potential for growth, and that's that. But yeah, basically, if you see what I'm seeing right now is the most money that I've ever made in property was by investing in markets that were they were not undersupplied but underpriced. That's the word. They were underpriced markets and they hadn't had a cycle yet. So Melbourne hasn't had its cycle yet, and when I say cycle, it hasn't had a boom cycle yet in a very long time, and it is due for a boom cycle. Why is it due for a boom cycle? Because everything is so undervalued. And when I say undervalued, I mean it's undervalued in relation to how much it actually costs to build and how much the land costs. in other CBD areas. Okay, let me give you an example. Per square meter, a CBD Sydney rate of a comparable location might be $60,000 per square meter. Victoria could be about 20 to 25, maybe even $30,000 a square meter for a comparable location. Now, for me, Melbourne prices shouldn't be as high as Sydney, but they shouldn't be that much lower. Okay, and from if we don't look at square meter, if we even look at square meter rates of land in Melbourne versus Brisbane, Melbourne's cheaper. Square meter rates of land, and I'm talking about comparable land here. I'm talking, and the land that I'm referring to when I'm talking about investing in high-rise CBD apartments is obviously city land, right? But yeah, if you can invest square meter of land, comparable square meter of land, Melbourne to Brisbane, Melbourne's cheaper. Even if you compare comparable square meter land values from Melbourne to Perth, Melbourne's cheaper. Now, what else do you look at? You go, what else have I looked at? Sorry. You look at, okay, what is the price of a comparable apartment, comparable area, comparable size, everything, to a Brisbane apartment. Melbourne's cheaper by a long way. It's half the price. Sydney, it's about a third of the price. Perth, about half the price. Okay, what else do we look at? We look at what are the rents in Melbourne versus Sydney. About two thirds, maybe about 2/3. What are the rents Melbourne for comparable properties versus the rents for Brisbane? About 80% cheaper. Same story for Perth. Okay, so what else do we look at? Then we look at, has high-rise apartments in Australia ever gone up in value? The reality is the apartments, the high-rise apartments, it wouldn't surprise you, but sometimes they're only growing by like 1 or 2 or 2.5% per year on average over a 30 to 50 year time period. And you may say, that sounds terrible. Yeah, obviously that sounds terrible. What you got to understand is when I invest in markets that have 30, 40, 50% growth in a period of a year, that's not normal either. So I don't care if the apartment or the property that I invest in normally has a 5% rate, 5% compounding rate over a 30, 40 year period. And that is, when I say 5% compounding rate, I say that because all of the apartments or all of the properties I invest in so far and I hold in my portfolio, that is their average compounding rate over a 30, 50 year period. But I'm going now into apartments which are high-rise apartments that are only growing by 1 or 2.5% per year. I know that. But the apartments that I'm buying haven't had any growth for 10, sometimes even 25 years. And when you compare them to other apartments in other capital cities, they are sometimes, as I've already been through, they're far cheaper. They have room to grow. Even if you do the maths on the value of the apartment in 1992, say, for example, or 1995, you say, what if this apartment grew from $300,000, this high-rise apartment grew from $300,000, which is an underpriced value today, and it grew by 1% or 2.5% or somewhere in there, it would still be worth $550,000 today. So if I buy an apartment today for $300,000 and it's got a potential to, like, in this period of time, it should, if it kept up with the normal growth rate of apartments of this style, it should be $500,000 or more. Okay, so and then what else did I look at in relation to high-rise apartments? The high-rise apartment market that took off in around 2022 was the Brisbane. Oh no, sorry, it was in Queensland. It was Surfers Paradise high-rise apartment market, and the apartment market went there from I think like at the bottom of that apartment cycle or that market cycle, I think it was, say, let's call it around 2010. The apartments maybe around 150,000, and probably up until 2018 they had a little bit of growth, and they probably got up to like maybe 210, 220. But then from 2018 to 2022, these apartments that were once worth 220 in 2018 are now worth 450, 500, 600 today, because they went through their market cycle. And bottom line is high rises grow too. You just got to understand what you are getting to if you're going to choose to invest in them. I see a lot of money to be made, so that's what I'm going to do. And if you want to see if I fail or see if I succeed, just stay tuned, because I'm buying about 10 of them. Bye.